Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
Sometimes weird things happen. Someone has to deal with it. And who are you going to call? All right, suck in the guts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
The superstars of the supernatural are back.
Happy New Year!
Hose 'em. Ghostbusters II.
We're the best! We're the beautiful! We're the only Ghostbusters! We're back! Who you gonna call?
Welcome to a movie film commentary track. My name is Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Hey, Brian. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the... Wait, no. What's the catchphrase for this one?
Are you gonna call?
Hey, Brian,
And
who
there's
you gonna
something
call?
strange in your Apple Podcast app.
There you go.
Who are you
I
gonna
like that.
call?
Hey.
Brian and Zachy.
Hey, I like that. There you go. You ran with it. You took the baton. You ran with it. Well, we're here to talk through Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, which I am very excited to do because I think when I watched this for research last night, that was the second time I've ever seen it all the way through.
Ever.
So this is still kind of a fresh experience for me.
Well, you know, the timing seems apropos. We are mere days away from a new Ghostbusters sequel.
Frozen Empire.
That's right. And this is the 35th anniversary of the release of Ghostbusters 2.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, well, we just recorded the commentary for Lethal Weapon 2. I really do feel like Ray Kinsella in Field of Dreams when he walks back and sees The Godfather on the marquee in the theater and he's walking through 1972. I feel like I've been walking through 1989. I mean, you know, crazy coincidence, I've sent you a picture of this, or showed it to you actually when you visited, but the movie theater down the street from me, they were filming something there. We think it may be Stranger Things, but they changed the marquee to all 1989 titles.
Yeah.
Right. So when I drive down the street, I'm seeing 1989 movies. I'm talking nothing but 1989 movies with you. I'm kind of loving it. I'm not going to lie.
I was about to say, when we drove by that marquee, I was kind of like, Brian, just leave me here. Let me live out my days in front of this marquee.
I tell you what, they showed Field of Dreams at the Regal Cinemas down the street from me last week, and I went and saw it. And I seriously, I felt like I was being hugged for 90 minutes. I mean, it was just, I mean, the movie itself, of course, but just it reminded me of being young and watching that film. And yeah, I mean, come on.
I think that when it comes to my nascent film buff life, summer of '89 is sort of like one of those, it's like a touchstone moment.
100%. I mean, obviously the top three are, Batman '89, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and
Lethal Weapon 2.
Lethal Weapon 2, yeah. And but then, I mean, actually, when this movie ended, Federica and I watched it together, and I was like, "Honey, can we watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids next?" I just want to keep going on my walk through 1989.
not a bad neighborhood to walk through at that.
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm excited to go through this with you. Why don't we take a short break, and then we will come back and we will watch Ghostbusters 2 from 1989. Okay, we are back and ready to go. I'm queued up. Brian, you queued up?
I am.
All right. Well, if you want to watch along with us, you certainly can. We will hit play on 3. We'll do the usual thing. 1, 2, 3, play. If you don't want to watch along, hey, that's fine. We'll try to keep the conversation as engaging as we can. But we will hit play on 3. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, play.
All right. Get that old school Columbia Pictures logo, the one without the Annette Bening looking woman.
Have we decided whether that is in fact Annette Bening or it's just somebody who looks like her? Is that?
There's a thing that goes around every now and then online where they show the picture that was used as the inspiration for that painting, and it does resemble the woman modeling in that painting.
Okay.
So I'm not entirely sure, but
So this slime right here, this nice pink slime,
yes.
that is kind of a subtle nod to the animated series, and sort of acknowledging that in the 5 years since this movie came out, the real Ghostbusters cartoon show had become just as important a part of this brand as the film that spawned the whole thing.
What do you mean? How does that relate to
I think the cartoon show had much more colorful and neon slime.
Well, I was reading. Actually, I do love this cold open here. Basically, right where you just see everyone in a bad mood,
just being terrible.
Yeah, which of course, if you know the plot, upon rewatch, it's kind of fun to see. Like, oh, there's this negative energy going around. The goo rises. I like that. Going back to what you're saying, yes, the animated show. So I was reading a lot about how they did keep the animated show in mind when they were putting this movie together. I mean, you can see it with Janine, right? I mean, the look of her character is
Janine. It looks like they put Annie Potts through the animatron, and she came out looking like that.
Yeah.
And also Slimer, the fact that Slimer pops up in this film, and by implication, he's like living in the firehouse.
Right. Which, because I think my introduction to Ghostbusters was the cartoon, and I thought Slimer was their pal. And so in the first one, when he's just this random ghost they encounter who's not friendly,
Yeah.
And I guess they cuted him up a little bit too in this one.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, this movie came out 5 years later. I was 9 going on 10, and I loved the first movie, and I loved the cartoon. So it was kind of interesting because that 5 years did not seem as interminable as you'd think, given 5 years, that's like half my life,
That's a funny way of putting it. Yeah.
Right. Because the cartoon had always been there. Like these characters were in my life continuously for that gap.
Well, you kind of answered a question I had for you, because I've said on here before, I think I saw Ghostbusters once when I was a kid. I was definitely liked it as a brand. I liked the cartoon, but I don't have it, memorized like I would something like the Goonies or Back to the Future or something. And so I was curious then.
By the way, real quick, another Mary Ellen Trainor appearance.
I know. I pointed and called her out last night when we watched this, because I was like, hey, she's just such a welcome presence in these 80s films.
Yep.
Oh, married to Robert Zemeckis at the time, right?
At the time, yeah. So yeah. Between this and Lethal Weapon 2, she had a pretty good summer in terms of the movies she got to appear in.
Yeah, and then Die Hard, of course.
Well, and by the way, here's Jason Reitman.
Yeah.
Which I had no idea that was him until about a year or so ago. And so when he says, "My dad says you guys are full of crap," that's pretty funny.
Yeah. And now he's carrying the mantle. Who knew?
He plays a kid named Jason. So by extension, his dad is Ivan.
Right.
Now, I love this. And sorry, we'll circle back to what you were saying before. But I love the fact, number one, the fact that the Ghostbusters theme song exists in the world of the Ghostbusters.
That's right.
But also that kids in 89 would be like, He-Man is the most incongruous thing about this whole damn movie.
Oh, because it's too late.
He-Man was extremely done by 89, right?
That's so funny.
Ninja Turtles, maybe.
Yes, this is when I was into Ninja Turtles. You're right, because then the film was coming out next year.
Yeah. If anything, they should have said Batman. That would have been kind of funny, because Batman ended up kicking this movie's ass.
I think I read that in one of the other dubs, like in Spanish or something, it was Batman.
Oh, really? See, that would make more sense.
Yeah, Batman's kind of evergreen.
Oh, and by the way,
actually, though, that's their competition. So maybe they don't want to call out Batman.
That's a good point.
Right?
Touché.
Yeah.
We're talking about the animated show. Winston, the fact that he does not have a mustache is another slight nod to how Winston looked in the cartoon show. Sorry, you were saying earlier.
I was just curious. I mean, being like a big fan of the first Ghostbusters, I mean, were you chomping at the bit for the sequel? How did you feel about it when you saw it? I mean, especially when you were a kid and you may be a little more open-minded to just being happy to see,
Yeah.
your favorite characters back again versus like scrutinizing the film.
So it was definitely the latter part of what you said. I was happy to see them back, and I was actually thinking about this before we got on. Like, summer of '89 obviously is the summer of Batman, but I was not surprised when I saw the trailers for Ghostbusters 2. So on some level, I knew it was on the way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I knew it was in the development pipeline. But I definitely remember, like, I link for summer of '89. It's Batman, Indy 3, and Ghostbusters 2. Those are the links for me, because Lethal Weapon I didn't get into until much later.
Sure.
By the time I got to see it, it was, I watched it via bootleg VHS, but it was exactly that. It was another chance to see my friends, and this film is much softer in tone than the first film, which is a little bit more, they're like bad boys, this man has no dick, that kind of thing,
Right.
and a lot of the adult humor in Ghostbusters completely missed me until I got much older. So for me, going back to what I was saying before, this feels very much of a piece with the animated show.
Mm-hmm.
And it I had no idea about all the behind the scenes finagling and how, the lengthy development period because of, like, they didn't want to work together, and this, like, all this stuff that was going on.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. I just take this for what it is, just because I came to it so late. Oh, by the way, that's Ivan Reitman's daughter right there.
Oh my gosh, that is.
Yeah.
That's Catherine Reitman?
Catherine Reitman.
Yeah. How funny.
But yeah, this movie does feel a little more colorful, a little more, kid friendly, which is funny because I always thought of the first one as sort of like a family film. I mean, maybe because that's the way the video store categorized it. But,
sure.
Yeah, no, it has a little bit of more of an edge to it. You're right.
Yeah, I think that if you watch them back to back, you're definitely like, well, this one is obviously not as good as the first one.
Which was my experience watching it the first time. I talked about it on the podcast because I many years ago, because I watched one. It was on whatever, HBO or something, and then they were playing two directly after, and I'd never seen it, so I was like, let's do this. And I couldn't help but feel like it was a little lesser than the first one. But now, without that pressure, without watching it back to back, I was like, oh, it's just a fun another adventure with these guys.
Yeah. That's exactly it. This, by the way, this World of the Psychic scene always cracks me up.
The way he keeps looking at the camera,
it's so funny.
Is so funny. Yeah. And by the way, it didn't even occur to me till the movie was over that, I mean, this guy is almost correct. He's
that's right.
The world is going to end on New Year's Eve. I mean, I almost thought they could have shot a little scene of him watching his TV at home, like, I knew it, kind of a thing, just to like really drive it home, as long as you're going to set it up at the beginning. Like, this guy actually knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, this is Kevin Dunn, by the way, this actor who's great character actor. He's in like just a ton of things.
Yeah, I always think of him from Transformers, the dad.
Oh yeah, he's the dad. That's right. So the bit with how she's like, the alien who approached me took me back to his room at the Holiday Inn. Like, it totally went over my head when I was a kid.
Yes.
It's so funny.
And by the way, him looking at the screen and going, Valentine's Day, summer. It's so good. No, I know. This is a little dark, actually.
The Paramus Holiday Inn. Oh, it cracks me up. Well, again, what makes it work is how both she and Kevin Dunn, they just play it totally straight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just the laugh. I mean, just from Venkman's reaction.
I know. Every time he looks at screen.
And I kind of like, it's funny because I've heard some people be like, oh, I don't like how this movie undoes, like the happy ending of Ghostbusters, of the first film. And I'm like, I mean, this is not like Return of the Jedi or something. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's just these are these working class guys.
Yeah.
And
Do you mean by breaking him and Sigourney Weaver up?
that, and like they're not working as Ghostbusters anymore or whatever. Like I never viewed it that way. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, it's like a comedy series. You know?
It is interesting seeing what a calculated script decision it was to break them up.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was reading Reitman or Aykroyd or someone saying they didn't want it to be so relationship focused on them. This is hilarious. This is Peter Venkman saying, like, trying to get ESP say something to the audience. But they wanted it to be like, no, these people are a team. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be off with his wife having their own business with their child. It would feel like too separate from the group. Although that is kind of what ends up happening quite a bit.
That's right.
The movie.
Yeah, exactly. So the Kurt Fuller character very much feels like, well, we need like a Walter Peck type.
Yes.
Which that I think if there is a valid critique is that this really does feel like cut and paste of like key elements of the first movie,
like the antagonist.
Not enough to distinguish it. Like I think having certain callbacks I think is fine, but essentially we have a film where they spend the first whatever it is half an hour not operating as Ghostbusters, and then they become Ghostbusters, and it's sort of it redoes that.
Yeah, I can see that. It's just funny. I felt like I was so much harder on it the first time I watched it, and then I did not feel that way the second time. I just sort of was like, I'm glad I get to watch this tonight. It's like a nice 90 minutes or fun.
I think that's why it works for me. That's why I've never had an issue with it. It's because, again, the camaraderie between the characters is so easy, and it's just without exception, I laugh every time we have when they're drilling in the street and they're trying to shine on the cops and stuff.
Cops, yeah.
Like I've seen this movie a million times and it cracks me up every single time.
Yeah.
Peter McNichol here, by the way, as Janosch. I love that as written, he was just like a normal guy,
Yeah, I think his name was Jason.
Yeah. And then he's like, well, I'm gonna just do this accent when I read. And they were like, yeah, go with that. And then there you go.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
And he's like one of the best parts of the movie. He's so funny in this movie.
Yeah. I read that he stole the accent from Meryl Streep's character in Sophie's Choice. Which is a choice. I've never seen Sophie's Choice. I know it's a very serious film.
That's so funny. I wonder if Meryl would be flattered by that or insulted.
I know. I love, by the way, the Vigo's head poking out, like the sort of CG of 1989 of his head poking out of that painting, where it sort of looks like the graphics of GoldenEye. Those like sort of cube-like faces.
I don't even know that that's CG, to be honest. I think they achieved that practically.
It could be. It could be like the Freddy Krueger thing in Nightmare on Elm Street, where you're it's like a cloth and you're pushing through.
I think that's what it is, because this was ILM did this, and this was, if not one of the last movies they did that had no digital effect.
Ah, interesting.
See, this scene right here, this kind of gets to what I'm talking about. It's just them goofing around with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fun to see.
Yeah.
And I think, the idea that even though the Ghostbusters are broken up, they still hang out together, right? Like Peter just kind of showed up here just to screw around with his friends, and I don't know, there's something about that appeals to me about it. This isn't we have to get their friendship back together kind of thing,
Right. They can have had, like, life has set them or forced them to go different ways in terms of whatever their jobs are these days, but they still have camaraderie. Yeah.
This is so funny.
Yeah.
Does squeezing one's ears really elicit confessions? I don't know.
I don't know.
Based on this movie,
feels like a very old school, like schoolmaster, school marm kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
With students, when they're haven't done the assignment or something.
So to your point earlier, yeah, the initial versions of this script had Oscar being Peter's son,
Right.
and that was Bill Murray who said, "I don't think it should be Peter's son."
Oh,
Because
okay.
right, and I think because because Bill Murray said that that would detract from Peter's relationship with the team,
Right.
and I'm like, man, that's kind of that's a smart call on his part, you know.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that was kind of interesting. I mean, I feel like they could write a book about the development, production, post production of this movie because you watch it and it feels a little scrappy, but you go with it. But when you
Mhm.
read afterwards all that it went through, the test screenings, all the things that were reshot, you're like, yeah, no, I guess I did sort of sense that, but I just sort of glossed over it because I was having fun.
Yeah.
But it was a very tricky production. It sounds like.
Well, among other things, I mean, they had no real desire to come back and do another one, and they intended the first one to just be a one and done.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about what a naive time that was. Right?
You're right.
You know what I mean? It's like, no, we're done. And
Right.
essentially, you know, the 5 year gap came down to like the studio one studio head didn't want to do it, and then the next studio head did want to do it. Like it's, you know, this push and pull. And they had less than a year to turn this thing around.
Isn't that amazing? All that time, then all of a sudden to be under the gun like that.
It's very similar to, and we'll get there eventually, but Lethal Weapon 4. Kind of the same story with that movie.
You know, I thought it was worth mentioning, but yeah, like the road to get here was tricky at first because the chairman of Columbia Pictures, David Putnam,
Mm-hmm.
he didn't want to make big blockbustery movies like this. He wanted to make smaller, more serious films. So he was resistant to making another Ghostbusters, period. But then he also, did you hear about this? How he alienated
He did
Bill
not like
Murray?
Bill Murray. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he's an actor who makes millions of dollars from Hollywood without giving back to his art. He's a taker.
Like, even if you're thinking that, just keep that to yourself, right?
I know, what a weird thing to say. So obviously Bill Murray has no interest in working with this guy, right?
Right.
But
I
then
mean, Bill,
at one point he was out and someone else was put in and they're like, "Yep, we're doing Ghostbusters 2."
he was out in very short order, which not surprising when you say, I don't want any blockbusters. I only want, you know, I mean, it's like, well, you
Yeah,
have to have a wide canvas of stuff. But in addition to that, I mean, Bill Murray like took a break after Ghostbusters because between uh, between Ghostbusters and this, the only movie he was in was Scrooged, which is the
now
year
why is
before.
that, by the way?
Well, he did that other. There was like the dramatic movie he did after Ghostbusters. I forget what it's called. Um,
Mad Dog and Glory or something?
is that right? No, it
Something.
was like
Some kind
a.
of mob movie, right?
See, I'm gonna have to look this up. I thought I remember the title. But anyway, I think he was disappointed that that movie did not do well.
I see. So he's tried to
And
stretch his wings, didn't go very well. He's a little wounded.
I think so. And so he just took a
Okay.
break. So there was also the sense of like, oh, is Bill Murray still a draw? But I
Hmm.
mean, in the meanwhile, Scrooge did okay, is my recollection anyway.
Sure. Richard Donner, going back to
Richard
our
Donner.
Lethal Weapon. Interesting. Okay. And then also there was the relationships were a little fraught between the Ghostbusters themselves, the actors, right? I mean,
That's right.
do you know anything about that?
I don't, but I would imagine. I would imagine. Oh, the Razor's Edge, by the way, that's the movie.
Razor's Edge. Got it.
Yeah. So it was more of like a dramatic thing, and it didn't perform, and I think he was a little upset by that. Um, I mean, look, Bill Murray is famously mercurial, and
Hmm. Hmm.
even after Ghostbusters 2, he and Harold Ramis, even though they worked together on Groundhog Day, they had
Right.
some kind of a falling out.
Yeah, that was not a happy production, as I've read.
Yeah. So I would imagine. I mean, I think the connections that these people have is such that they love hard, but they probably, you know, carry grudges too. You know, like
Sure. Yeah.
It's hard, I would imagine. I don't know. Um, but by all accounts, it was just a matter of putting them all in a room together and being like, you guys figure this out. And by the end, they were like, all right, let's make this movie.
Yeah, I read that. I think Michael Ovitz, the guy who helped found CAA, and he was Bill Murray's agent. And he was basically like, we're all getting a lunch, and by the end of the lunch, they're like, okay, we'll do it.
Yeah. And they like Bill Murray wanted 10 million up front. And so these two were like, well, we want 10 million too. And it's like, well, if that's the budget right there.
Yeah.
Right. So instead they all took less upfront in exchange for a portion of first dollar gross. And according to Ivan Reitman, they were like, oh, was it 10%? He's like, it wasn't that, but it was big. It was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I saw got the budget down to about 30 million, whereas otherwise it might have been closer to 50.
And that's still more than the first one cost.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. By the way, doesn't this look really good? Like the first movie always has kind of this like fuzzy sort of gauzy look to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But this movie looks really crisp.
Yeah. I wonder why that is, actually.
I've always been kind of fascinated by that. You like, for example, I watched Off Your Voodoo. I watched Gung Ho for the first time last week. And I was like, man, this movie looks like 50 years old, instead of like 30 or whatever it is.
What do you think of that movie, by the way?
I thought it was really close to reaching its potential. But there was fun to be had, and I felt like it was heading in a direction, and it felt a little sloppier than I expected.
That movie, it's like Michael Keaton is carrying it on his back, right? Like
100%, yeah. And I forget his first name, but Watanabe, his sort of partner in the he's great.
He's really good in it. Yeah,
a lot of components I really like to it. I kind of wish it had come to a head a little bit more.
I watch it and I'm like, is this racist?
I know it's one of those things. Like, yeah, I know. I probably wouldn't show it to anyone today without any caveats or anything. But I understand what the film is striving toward.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Although to his credit, I watched the Siskel and Ebert review afterwards, and Ebert was like, I think this is racist. Back in 1986. But I understand. I really was like, I know what this movie is trying to do, and I appreciate the message it is striving for. Wait, so the voice?
I had no idea it was Max von Sydow.
No, I leaned over to Federica last night and was like, I know that voice. Who is that? And I had to look it up, and no idea that the voice was dubbed.
Yeah, apparently the actor who plays Vigo, Wilhelm von Homburg, did not know that his voice had been dubbed until he watched the movie, and he walked out.
Well, that's a bummer.
He's also, by the way, he's in Die Hard. He's one of Hans Gruber's goons.
Yeah, that's right. The previous year.
That's right. So so this whole bit, see, with Ray being lowered down into the river of slime and everything. I first of all, I like how this movie feels like a progression of the mythology that the first film established, and how finding a river of slime underneath New York feels entirely of a piece with what the first film established.
With the building,
and also again, I'll say, the cartoon show really helped in that regard, because that show really did build out the mythology.
Interesting.
That show, the animated show, right? The story editor was J. Michael Straczynski, who created Babylon 5. And so the stories did have a little bit more sophistication than one would expect from Saturday morning animation.
I was going to say, I remember the look of it, the aesthetic, the action figures, but I can't say I really remember the stories very well. But yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
This cracks me up so much. The way Venkman, he's just like the consummate bullshit artist, right?
Yeah.
Like, the phone lines are over there, and he doesn't skip a beat. And then again, it's like, oh, we talked to Con Ed and the phone company. He's like, I got a major gas leak over.
Yeah. Right.
Like he just doesn't. He just shifts right away. You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love
that's
this
kind of
stuff though. Yeah, go, sorry.
the no. I mean, just it's the camaraderie and the
Yeah.
it's this perfect mix of humor and thrills that I think makes these movies work.
100%. I was just going to say everything about this scene is kind of what I love about this, the potential of Ghostbusters and what I want from it, which is three guys having to stall cops, from digging a hole, over like a abandoned train tunnel, and a guy taking samples of plasmic goo. Like, that's just the fun of this. That's the fun you
Yeah.
get to have with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and I think, if there was one change I would have made is I think it's a shame that Winston is not involved in these early goings, other than the scene in the beginning with Ray at the birthday party. He's not in the mix, and right?
Yeah. I 100% agree. I mean, his involvement in the first one obviously is kind of minimal because he's supposed to be the man on the street who joins into the wackiness, I suppose. But in this one, I am confused why he sort of just pops in and out of the misadventures.
Yeah, like think about it. We see at the start of the film, we see that Egon is working at the university, Ray is at the bookstore, and Peter is doing the TV show. Where's Winston? What's he doing?
Yeah.
Like the film didn't even deem his current status worth telling us.
Yeah. And why isn't he here helping them? Well, so then he's missing from the courtroom scene because the courtroom scene is tied.
Exactly. He shows up at the very beginning. He shows up at the very beginning to be like, "Hey, man, I hope you guys are okay." Well, when is he not sitting and watching the trial? Like, wouldn't he help them?
Right. It's just it never feels like a 4-person team. It always feels like 3-person team and Winston, and I don't know why.
Yeah. I think we get there by the end, and at least by the middle, when the Ghostbusters are a team again. But I see no reason why he shouldn't be part of all this stuff in the beginning.
Agreed. Yeah.
Harris Yulin is so funny as Judge Wexler.
Yeah, he's great. It was bothering me last night. His face was so familiar.
Oh, he's another that guy.
Yeah. I saw he was in about 10 episodes of 24. I figured that was probably it.
24. He's in Clear and Present Danger. He's a terrific actor. He's in an episode of Deep Space Nine called Duet, where it's like some of the best acting he's ever done. Just terrific. But he's hilarious in this.
Rick Moranis.
It doesn't it feel like whenever we get to see him in a movie in an old, it's like water in a desert. You're like, oh, it's so precious. Let's cherish this.
I know, and he's so good. He's so good in this. He's so fun.
See, this it definitely feels like they were like, we need to figure out a way to bring Lewis in because people and I think they found the perfect way to incorporate him.
Agreed. Because it sounds like a lot of his scenes were cut from this movie because he was supposed to basically be hunting Slimer.
Yeah,
for a lot of the movie, and because they thought that's what the kids would want, right? Based on the popularity of the cartoon show, and then after testing it, they realized it felt like a distraction. I guess Ivan Reitman was like, "I was surprised," so we cut it.
Yeah, yeah. That's great, Lewis. Short but pointless.
Yeah.
I love the look on the judge's face when Lewis finishes his opening. He's like, "What was that?" See, this I have to say, I love this whole courtroom scene. I think it's very well done. I think just in terms of establishing the slime responds to emotion, but also just sort of giving them all business. I think the bit where Venkman is being questioned on the stand is just priceless. It's so funny.
Yeah. I have to admit, this was one of the scenes I just didn't get when I watched it the first time because I thought, how does everyone not remember what these guys did? They saved New York. Like the Ghostbusters 1 ends with New York cheering in the streets for the Ghostbusters, right? But I guess now these days I can imagine some people just, well, I wasn't there. I didn't see it with my own eyes. So there are many people who are skeptical of what they did. And this trial is also related to the fact that they are not allowed to work, right, as paranormal or as investigators, and they were out there drilling a hole in the street without any permission. So
That's right.
That was something I wasn't thinking about the first time. I couldn't get over the fact that people didn't know what they did 5 years ago.
Well, I guess in the world of Ghostbusters, they do have the theme music, but they don't have the animated show to remind people what they're doing. See, so that's
a good
the
point.
issue.
They do have the song, though. You're right. They must think that those people are conspiracy quacks, the people who are all into the. They even wrote them a damn song. Yeah, but his whole business where he's feeding what he wants Lewis to say.
It's an isolated incident. What?
Yeah.
You realize how much, like, how essential Bill Murray was to making a sequel. Like that was the issue that held up making another one for so long, because he was adamant about not wanting to do one, and there was the general consensus that, well, if there's no Venkman, there's no movie.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
And you see that definitely in this, what we're seeing, right? It's like you got to have him. He's the center that it sort of all revolves around, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that was in all the TV spots. Who are you going to call?
Right. I really do love, it's not a flashy looking movie, but it's just beautiful widescreen composition, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way that they frame all, having a team of 4, of course, you want right there. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I really love the composition in this movie.
See, was the aspect ratio different in the first one? That's like, I want to pull that up and compare it.
I am almost certain it's 235 at least, if not 239 or something. It's
that
pretty
makes
wide.
sense.
So here we go.
But no, what you were saying is definitely true. That this one, and I'm watching a 4K copy right now, but I mean, it looks substantially better than the 4K of the first film.
And I just wonder why that is, like film stock
Lighting.
or something, lighting choices. I marvel when I look at Back to the Future. I mean, that movie looks like it was shot yesterday, the way they preserved that film, but without going overboard and making everything look waxy.
Yep. So again, I mentioned, all the special effects here were by ILM. So they had a busy summer because they did the effects for this and Back to the Future and
part 2
and Indiana Jones, Back to the Future 2 and Indiana Jones. So kept busy.
Yeah, crazy. The Abyss. I was reading about everything they were working on, and it got to the point where this movie kept changing. And so they kept coming to ILM like, we need this. And at some point they're like, we're done. Like, we can't do anything additional. Whatever you've assigned us, we will do. And they even had to farm out work, but they're like, no more. Like, we can't do anything new. You have to stop giving us new stuff.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
This right here, by the way, is so funny. And you don't want us exposing ourselves. Yeah, ILM did the effects for most of the Star Trek movies, so 2, 3, and 4. And then when it came time for part 5, which was this same summer, they were like, "Dude, you can get our C team or whatever,
You're right.
And so they ended up not doing the effects for that movie, which is why it has pretty lousy special effects.
Mm.
Although, what's funny is 1989 was, up until then, the most sequels ever released in a year, which just feels quaint by comparison.
Yeah, it feels cute, but it's I see it. It's true.
Yep. Oh wait, hold on. We got to acknowledge one of the best jokes of all time.
Doe. Hey.
Egon. And then I love the look.
I know, that's great. I love this practical stuff though here, right? Like the chairs popping up.
Well, this whole sequence is done very well. All the ways in which it's executed. I mean, the incorporation of the ghost projections and just how those are puppets with people in there, and I mean, it looks like CGI.
It looks great. Yeah, I
Right?
love the puppet look of the ghost too. It's kind of fun. It's like scary cartoon or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. What were
But
we saying?
again, what we were saying earlier, how is Winston not here in the courtroom?
I know.
It doesn't make any sense to me because we know he was there. He was there at the top of this scene,
I know. Well, like, why not? Yeah. Where did he go? Where'd he go?
right? So
I know.
that irks me, I will say.
Agreed.
I
We have to call
I
this
don't
out real
tolerate
quick.
this.
This Winston erasure. Sorry.
I was about to say, thank you. See, you finished my thought.
Well, I was going to say the Scolari brothers, the
Yes.
ghosts that they're busting here, they're based on real criminals. Yeah, did you know
is that right?
They're based. The Scolaris were robbers in the Chicago area who once robbed Harold Ramis's father.
Get out of here.
Yeah, they were captured as fugitives in Kansas City, extradited back to Chicago to stand trial for multiple charges. Eventually, they were convicted of multiple robberies and murder, and they were executed in the electric chair.
Get out of here. Wow.
Yeah. Not
That makes it feel even weirder that they made him look like the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, I know.
I wanted to mention.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, did you see, you know how now movie theaters are doing these elaborate popcorn buckets? Obviously, we have the Dune one.
Oh, yeah. They have like a
very
ghost
memorable.
trap one.
Yeah, they have a ghost trap. And I was like, that looks cooler than any like toy ghost trap I've seen in a store.
I had the same thought.
Right?
It's
a savvy way for the theaters to generate more income.
Hey, why not? They got to make whatever money they can.
Yeah.
So yeah, Annie Potts, I mean, she looks nothing like she does in the first movie.
Yeah, she just looks like a woman from 1984 in the first one, but in this she has that sort of, I don't know what you call it, like sexy redhead bob thing, the glasses, and it's looks like Janine from the cartoon.
That's right.
Yeah.
So and by the way, here's the remix of the Ghostbusters theme by Run DMC and Ray Parker Jr.
Right.
Which, like, to me, that's kind of the interesting thing is, like, I sort of situate this as, like you watch the first Ghostbusters, you're like, this is a 1984 movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch this, you're like, this is a 1989/90 movie. Like, the music just locks it in.
100%. Yep.
you know?
Yep.
I really like this montage though of all of their stuff because I'm kind of like, hey, it's like, no, they're back, whatever. Okay, so they weren't doing it for 5 years. They just went right back into it without skipping a beat,
if just again for the thing that tripped me up on the first viewing, I think I might have had some people on the news be like, I told you they were real, or something like that.
Yeah,
where it's like,
no, I agree.
They're
with
the
that.
people that were skeptical. That's how you could get a judge who doesn't believe them. But I saw what I saw, and we need them now more than ever, or something.
So this bit right here, real quick, where the Ecto is driving erratically, and Venkman kind of is like, "What's going on?" That's supposed to be from later in the movie where Ray has been possessed by Vigo.
Yeah,
and they just cut out most of that plot, but they just put that in. They dropped that into this montage.
I thought that was interesting. I mean, that's like in the first one also, right? The montage is filled with sequences that were full scenes, like the jogger, the ghost jogger at Central Park. That was a full scene, but they just...
And I think it works for the most part the way it is.
No, I agree. Yeah.
This is the Ecto 1A, by the way, which I love. It's like another toy to sell,
Oh, that's funny. What are the differences?
I guess the major difference is this one has like the electronic letter thing on top. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
It's got different stickers on it, decos, whatever.
Different stickers.
This scene is very funny to me.
Yeah. I just love, I don't know what word I would use to describe this, but I just think there's something so fun and playful, I guess, about the concept of, the supernatural, whatever it is, antagonism in this movie, like having this goo that basically reacts when you get angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And putting it underneath New York City, and the city's been, is angrier than ever. And something about that just feels so fun and delightful,
Yeah, I think that gets to the story by Ramis and Aykroyd, which is kind of to get to that idea of like the way Harold Ramis said, like essentially the movie is like, look, you got to be good to each other for 48 hours, and like, how do you ask people in New York to be nice? Which,
Yeah, it's fun.
It's not a bad hook,
Well, when I saw the Frozen, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer, and the whole concept, as far as I can tell, is people being frozen by fear. I was like, yeah, that feels on brand. Like
Yeah.
that sort of concept feels related to something like this, and I like that.
I
It's
agree.
simple, it's fun. Yeah. So what's implied here, Zachy?
Sleeping with the slime.
It's funny, actually. Federica slowly turned her head at me and was like, "What?"
That's hilarious. So about a month ago, I was at Target, and as is my wont, I went over to the toy section. I was just kind of seeing what new stuff they have, and they had these like retro, real Ghostbusters figures from the old cartoon show that they've re-released. So
That's cool.
like complete replicas, beautiful, And I was like, oh man, and I'm holding them. I'm like, man, should I get these? And then on the PA, my hand to God, this song starts playing at that exact moment.
Really?
Yeah. So I was like, well, clearly I meant to get this.
Clearly, God wants me to have these action figures.
It was literally like, should I? And then right then the song starts playing.
I love that. See, but now here's Winston.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying, right? It's like he waited for them to get their shit together, basically.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. There was a lot of editorial finagling with this movie and reshoots and deleted scenes. And I do wonder if some sort of explanation might have accidentally been cut out. I mean, sort of like.
But real quick, this is so funny. It's like, oh, what's like my favorite show? He's like, what was your other favorite? Bassmasters. And then the way he just backs away from him slowly. yeah, I know Bassmasters. Bassmasters. It's a fishing show. Yeah, I know. I definitely feel like Winston unfairly got the chop,
Yeah, well, what I was going to say, because again, you feel a little bit of the gaps in certain sort of ways that things play out. Like at the end with Lewis, where he's like, "I'm finally a Ghostbuster." Like that feels like we were missing a little bit of the lead up to that, and which is those deleted scenes of him trying to prove he can be a Ghostbuster by capturing Slimer, but all of that was cut out.
That's a great point. Yeah, because certainly for me, I mean, I've watched this movie for 35 years and I just roll with it. Like, okay, but there isn't a real sense that that's what he wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it almost feels just like an excuse for another action figure at the end. I'm a Ghostbuster too,
It was funny because after this movie came out, the animated show lasted for another year or two after this movie. So it wasn't like this signaled the total end of the franchise initially. But they updated Janine's design to look even more like she does in this movie. And then they added Louis Tully to the cast of the animated show.
Oh, funny. After this movie.
Yeah.
Now, this painting wasn't actually a painting, right? It was a picture that was then doctored, I think, to look like a painting.
That's what I read. Yeah,
I've seen it on Reddit. It comes up every now and then, the photo shoot for this, and it's kind of fascinating.
I think if there is a problem for me with the construction of the Nemesis is that Vigo is no Gozer. I think that's kind of the problem. Right? It's harder to fully grasp what his deal is and how he's connected to the River of Slime.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what I mean? Like the whole thing about the slime and it's amplifying bad moods, whatever. But like, tell us how what does Vigo have to do with that? Articulate that.
It's funny you say that because there's a whole article I read about the test screening of this movie. And Reitman talks about that. I guess test audiences weren't sure how Vigo, the slime, all the ghosts were connected. So what we're watching now is their attempt to connect them more than they were with the first pass of the film.
Which is fascinating to me. I mean, you tell me. Are you able to? I mean, we kind of go with it. You roll with it. You're like, okay, so something. He's doing something, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to me that all the negativity in New York has created this goo, right? And then maybe the goo is then unleashing forces that were dormant or something. Like the painting, like maybe there's some sort of evil that's been imprinted on that picture, but because of this goo, supernatural goo, like it's been awoken. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that is what happened. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Like the picture is from Carpathia. So it ended up in New York. The river, the pneumatic system goes back however many years. So how is that connected to the painting? I'm sure it's all articulated in the movie, but I'm struggling to put those connections together.
Yeah. Same. But it's interesting.
I know. Real quick, I wanted to say, like, I think bringing Dana back, I actually like that they didn't just leave that plot thread. Like, oh, he dated Dana 5 years ago, and now she's not part of it. I'm glad she's in this one.
Yeah, it seems like the go-to in this era was, well, she couldn't handle it, or she left me, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like Vicky Vale and
yeah, you know what I mean? Indiana Jones.
Yep. I was gonna say it's interesting you talk about the tube underground with the train and the goo and everything, and I guess in the first draft of the script there was always the thought of a tube, which was the original first idea that Dan Aykroyd had was he wanted Dana kidnapped and taken to Scotland, where she discovers a fairy ring and an underground civilization, and the Ghostbusters would have to travel through an underground pneumatic tube that was over 2,000 miles long. And
don't you just love how batshit crazy Dan Aykroyd's ideas are? Like, I
honestly, yes,
I love it.
I do.
I love
it. Right, because I mean, famously, the first Ghostbusters,
he goes for it.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be in New York in modern times and going into libraries and fighting ghost librarians, right? It was like a crazy future Blade Runner world, where there were many, many Ghostbusters. It was like way, way out there, and I love that. I love that about him. Like, he can throw everything at the wall, and then you bring in Harold Ramis or someone to like turn it into something a little bit more accessible. And I think that's a good pairing, right?
I agree.
Get the wild ideas and whittle them down. And even he admitted that the whole fairy ring and underground civilization, he said, was too far out, too inaccessible.
Yeah, which I would agree with that.
Yeah. I'm Joe Namath. That makes me think of Vapor Lock.
That's right. You have to explain that. People are going to be like, what are you saying?
Yeah, so on screen, Peter is giving the baby a Joe Namath jersey, a real Joe Namath jersey to use, like, to swaddle the baby. Mm-hmm. And Joe Namath guested on The Simpsons and basically had his car break down. And he was going to give advice. Who was it to? I can't remember. Was it to Bart?
To Bart. Yeah,
he's going to give advice to Bart, but then his car that's broken down gets fixed, and it was just Vapor Lock.
It's the football episode where Homer wants Bart to be the quarterback.
That's right. He's like, just remember this one thing. But then, the car gets fixed. It's Vapor Lock. He leaves.
He doesn't get to say it.
And the only thing Bart can remember is, just remember this one thing, Vapor Lock. I realize that still probably didn't make any sense, but.
Yeah, no, I got you.
But no, even Bill Murray said that when they all signed on to make this movie, it was with a different script. So it really does sound like this thing was, in constant flux.
But I should say, I said this to all my kids at some point or another when they were little. You're short, your belly button sticks out too far, and you're a terrible burden on your poor mother.
That's hilarious.
I was just watching this with Hamza yesterday. I was like, "Yep, I said that to you when you were just a little teeny tiny." So this here, like, they've grown up with them. That's I was, I mean Hamza's 17 now, and I remember when he was like 2 or 3, and he started crying at the end of this one. Is one part where it gets scary with the baby,
Mm.
and I happened to get up and because I got a phone call, and he just started crying and run out of the room.
Aw.
I'll point out the moment when that happened.
Yeah.
But I love the info dump about Vigo. Like, it's all, if you're not paying attention, you're almost not going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff about Vigo, how he was shot and stabbed and quartered and whatever. Like,
Right.
and if I had a nickel for every time I've said death is but a doorway, time is but a window, I'll be back. Boy. Usually on the last day of class, I tell my students that.
That's hilarious.
This whole thing where Venkman is taking pictures of Vigo and he's acting like a fashion photographer is so funny.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking that's pre Austin Powers. I mean, I think of Austin Powers when I think of that joke.
Yeah, that's right.
You're a tiger. You're a tiger. No.
Yeah.
Yes. Kind of a thing. But yeah, no, he's
the girls like you. The guys, I bet they both like you. The animals like you.
And I love by the end. I mean, he's only like a foot and a half away from the picture, just snapping.
Mhm.
Yes.
See, so we see it here where Ray is kind of like getting possessed by Vigo. And I guess that was meant to be much more of a plot point throughout the movie. And for whatever reason, they just, other than this and then at the end, which kind of comes out of nowhere, they just chopped it out.
Yeah, which I can see being a valid happening, a mystery throughout the film. But at the same time, can't say you miss it. The movie does flow at a nice pace, and maybe you can understand why they lost it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is like, is it something specific about Ray, or is it anybody who happens to look into the picture's eyes?
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of ideas thrown at the wall, and it feels like they just sort of shot them all and added some more later after test screenings and just. But I feel like, so yes, like I was saying, after learning all of that, looking back on the film, I can see how scrappy it kind of is.
Yeah.
But when you're watching it, it's just it's an enjoyable hour and a half.
That's kind of the thing is like we were saying. I mean that summer you had Ghostbusters 2, you had Star Trek 5, Indiana Jones 3, Lethal Weapon 2, right, and then of course Back to the Future 2 was later that year. So that's like 5 sequels,
right?
Which again, think about how, like, back then it's like, oh my god, 5 sequels in a year.
Right.
Nowadays it's like 5 sequels in a month.
I know. Well, and I sent you this meme where it was basically Dr. Manhattan, right? We're experiencing time all at once. And he's like, it's 1984. I'm going to the theater to see Dune and Ghostbusters. It's 2021. I'm going to see Dune and Ghostbusters. It's 2024. I'm going to see Dune and Ghostbusters.
Time is a flat circle.
Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising to us anymore. I couldn't help but think when I was watching this last night, having her wet in a towel is a choice.
That's interesting, right?
I was sort of like, I wonder why. Like, I mean, it just to add a little bit of sex appeal to this movie.
That's a good question.
No. It just sort of stood out to me a little bit. And I'm not saying anything nefarious. I just stood out to me, and I was like, it's a choice, and like maybe they're like, we gotta get some shoulder in this movie. I don't know.
I mean, it's something that at this stage of her career, Sigourney Weaver didn't have to do it if she didn't want to. So
Sure.
Maybe she saw something appealing about having Dana be a little bit more vulnerable. I think Dana is kind of a different character for Sigourney Weaver. There's also that, she's so otherwise plays these kind of tough as nails characters. You know,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you're right.
like I think the pairing of Dana and Peter is a good one, right? Because she gives as good as she gets, right? She doesn't put up with his crap.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? He's kind of has this front, but she's attracted to the vulnerable guy underneath,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
that makes for interesting chemistry. You know?
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, this another pairing.
I was about to say. Speaking of pairings, this one kind of felt out of the blue because the first movie implies that she has kind of a crush on Egon,
Mm-hmm.
and that was definitely something that the cartoon ran with. So, but it's sweet. I like it. I think it's very sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it.
Lewis is such a dork. Like, it feels so bad for him.
It's a big summer for Rick Moranis. He also had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That was in the top 10 box office grossers of 1989, number 8.
I need to revisit that one.
Yeah, me too. I mean, immediately he made me think of it last night, and thinking of 1989, I was like, I'm going to watch that again.
Yeah.
By the way, this was something that was added after a test screening because
This scene?
Yeah, they thought that I guess the movie was focusing too much on the relationship between Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver, and so they needed some more flashy scenes, increasing the urgency, and so this was one of them.
Well, okay. So number one, you establish, like, you have the picture of the river of slime in the or the river of slime is in the picture, and that kind of establishes the connection. But beyond that, just the sort of the everyday, like, drudgery of, like, oh, what do you want to eat? How about this? How about, that's what I really like, is there's sort of a matter of factness about the Ghostbusters job.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
You know?
That's a good point. I mean, they could just be, yes, it's just a blue collar job that happens to have a supernatural element to it.
Well, at least Winston gets this hero moment. Look at that.
Yeah.
On that door,
Yeah.
like a badass.
Why wasn't he in there in the first place?
he's always out of the room.
Justice for Winston. Yeah. There were some more things that were shot to spice up the film. I'll point them out later. See, but yeah, here you have them going off on their romantic business. You can see that, where it's like, if you didn't have that, well, all right, I'll just say it now. Basically, the underground ghost train sequence with Winston and the severed heads, was all added.
And that's another sequence I really like, so I'm glad they added that.
Me too. I love the ghost train thing. That is so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can imagine without the flaming pictures we just saw, and then you just cut straight to, Peter and Dana going out to dinner. It's like, okay, like, you want to see a little bit more supernatural razzmatazz.
You want some bustin' to make you feel good.
Exactly.
I get it.
That's all I'm saying.
One thing that I remember as a kid, I suppose, I was like, why'd they change their symbol? Like, that never made sense to me.
I thought that last night. I was like, why? And why is it making a 2?
Well, I see it as he's doing like the V for victory, or like a peace sign.
I think that's fair.
But that's expensive. Like,
yeah.
It's not like they're flush with cash,
Yeah.
They got to change all their, and it's funny because none of the other branded merch bothered going along with that, because I think it was like, no, this original symbol is what's worth a lot of money,
it makes sense. But you can imagine, you want to come up with new things to sell with, or in the logic of the universe, they brought in a brand manager who, it's like,
right,
we need something strong, something that, like, to your point, expresses victory.
Well, actually, it's funny. We're talking about the merch. That's actually one of the reason that they call the car Ecto 1A in this and not Ecto 2 is because in the cartoon there was an Ecto 2, which is like a portable helicopter get up thing. And so again, the producers said they made an active effort to not contradict the cartoon if they could avoid it.
Isn't that funny? You can imagine nowadays a movie being like, screw the cartoon, we're the thing, but I kind of
Yeah.
love the synergy that they were trying to respect.
Yeah, it was a smart thing because I would say certainly now, this many decades later, the fandom for Ghostbusters is at least as much from the cartoon show as anything else.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, right? I mean, it felt like for many years, something that we loved, a brand we loved as kids, the movies were like, well, whatever, who cares about that thing? We're going to make our own thing. And we'll come up with our own rules and new characters. And as kids, we're always like, no, we're like, we're the ones who are going to be begging our parents to buy the videotapes and the toys and the whatever. Like, give us what we want.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really savvy for them then to respect the youthful audience they know they gained through the cartoon.
Yeah.
I do love this. I just love the concept of a ghost train. I don't know why. It's just cool.
It's very Spielbergy. It feels like something out of Amazing Stories or something.
Yes, that's what it is. You're yep.
His screaming is so funny.
Yeah, it's great.
See that I'm telling you, Brian, I'm Team Winston. Anytime he gets to do stuff, it makes me happy because I just feel like he gets ignored a little too much,
Yeah, I'm thrilled. I got to meet him actually when he did a voice for Puppy Dog Pals.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. That's right.
And I got to go to the record, and he was very cool.
I can't remember if I said that I had ordered an autographed picture from him, like from his website. This is like a while ago. I don't know if he still offers that. And his wife emailed me, and she's like, Ernie's out of town right now, but I just wanted to let you know that I received your order, and it's like so sweet. I was like, it's like really nice,
I love that. Doesn't he live in Minnesota?
I don't know, but that seems like it would be the where to be, right? Like,
yeah, no, I love that idea. And then him just be like, well, gotta make another movie. Pack his bags,
He's a regular on the Quantum Leap show right now.
Oh, that's right. I did know that.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. It would have otherwise then just cut to this. But I love the spookiness along the way. There's some forces acting against them, it seems, right?
Well, and we talked past it, but I love the thing where they're like, "Where's Ray? Ray? Guys!" This cracks me up where Winston gets pulled in, and then you get this kind of long shot of him just screaming as he's just being pulled down the river.
Yeah. Yeah, I was reading with the compositing. They had to hand animate him bobbing along. I thought that was
That's
amazing.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I got to be honest, Brian. If it's you and me down there, you get pulled into the river, I turn around and I go home and I go to bed.
Yeah. You know what?
I love you, man.
You know what? I wouldn't hold it against you. I don't know what that stuff would do to you. You got kids, man.
So I wanted to mention the music in this movie. If there is one thing that I'm not crazy about, it is the score by Randy Edelman, who I otherwise like.
Can I be honest? I didn't even really notice it.
Well, that's a problem, right?
Yeah. What's it like? How's it different than the first one?
Well, I think what Elmer Bernstein did with the first film is he found this perfect mix between comedy and adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And he found a way to merge those two. And there's certain thematic motifs that he brings back, but in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
Dun, 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 and you hear different versions of that throughout. And he, when it came time to do this, they offered it to him, and he was like, "I'm done with comedies." He went off and did My Left Foot. So I think he's okay. I think for himself, he made the right choice. But I think Randy Edelman, I don't think he found the right lane to occupy. And so the music is either distracting or unremarkable.
Man, nuts because normally I do listen to the score, but I honestly don't remember it. I was noticing all the sort of late 80s pop songs, you know?
No, a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah. You think after the Ghostbusters song was such a big hit in the first film, they're like, okay, we
Yeah.
soundtrack.
let's load this up.
Yeah.
Well, and the Bobby Brown song did chart, but that too got its ass kicked by Batman because of Bat Dances that
Right.
summer.
Prince. Yep. Yeah, that was
So they really vamped up Janine in between movies, didn't they?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no, she's just kind of wearing like sweaters and jeans in the first one, and here,
Yeah, right?
yeah, yeah, that's fun. I'm sure it was more fun to play.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Do you remember? It's so funny. I think I said this at the exact same moment last night with Federica. But do you remember that slime that used to come as a toy in cereal? You get that little plastic. Or no, not cereal. It was like at the grocery store. There'd be you put a quarter in,
at the checkout lane and stuff.
Yeah, I used to love that stuff, and I don't even know why. But the goo all over their heads reminds me of it.
And it was like this type of color,
Exactly. Yeah, or it was like green or something.
Whatever happened to those quarter machines?
I don't know.
Because you get it was like different things. There was like little plastic, like a container, and it would have like little wrestler guys in them or whatever. You know what I'm talking, right?
Exactly. Or bouncy balls or fake tattoos. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Man, I miss that.
Me too. I guess nobody has quarters anymore. We have Apple Pay, and
we need Apple Pay for those things.
That would be hilarious.
This is so funny.
I love the red long johns.
I know that it's like from a 1930s cartoon.
Yeah. By the way, we have to call it that couple, the woman who gets the slime all over her. Do you recognize her?
Have we gotten there yet?
No, but the blonde woman
in
she's
the back,
hubbubbing in the background right there. Yes, she popped out to me last night, and I didn't know why. And it ends up that's Michael Ovitz's wife, Judy Ovitz.
Okay,
who is in Back to the Future 2, and she's the woman who sells the sports almanac to Marty.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know, something about her. And then her date there is played by a gentleman named Pete Mosen, who was a Ghostbusters super fan, and he did a lot of promotional stuff for the Ghostbusters, built an Ecto-1 replica. So they put him in the film.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
This is in the 80s when building your own Ecto-1, like that's a lot harder than it is now.
Oh yeah. I mean, now there's, Instagram pages dedicated to building DeLorean time machine replicas. And
there's Bobby Brown, by the way.
Yeah. Right.
I gotta say, I like his song. It's a pretty catchy song.
Yeah, it's good.
I pulled up the music video for his song. It's called On Our Own, and it's like got how the Ray Parker video for the first one has all these cameos. This one does too, where it's like Donald Trump and Christopher Reeve and like all these people that are in the video.
Little time capsules. You have the 1984 Chevy Chase and all those people, right? And then
Danny DeVito.
89. Yeah.
Speaking of Danny DeVito, I think Reitman's next movie after this was Twins, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh wow. Yeah, and then Kindergarten Cop, and he had like a tear there.
Yeah, that's right. We should say the late Ivan Reitman. We haven't mentioned that between the last movie and this one, he passed away.
Right.
Which still, it feels weird to me because he, even while promoting, Ghostbusters Afterlife, he seemed relatively youthful,
Yeah. No, I agree.
That news came very suddenly. It felt like for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was still working on stuff, right? I have to look it up, but
yeah,
I feel like he did that movie, My Super Ex-Girlfriend, with Uma Thurman and Luke Wilson.
That was him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Margulies, who also passed away. I'm glad they brought him back as the mayor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, I love where the first movie leaves the mayor with the Ghostbusters, he's on their side, and then just sort of sheer political calculation, craven political calculation, made him cut bait with them.
Right.
What
Right.
a weasel! So,
See, and again, I mean, is it really missing from the movie? I don't know, but I wouldn't mind a little world building here about what New York City thinks about the Ghostbusters, how people are divided on them. Like, weren't you once on their side? It's like, well, like it'd be
yeah,
interesting to me, I guess, as a grown up to understand that a little bit better.
right, yeah.
But yeah, English doc.
See, but when you think about it, I mean, this scene is very similar to the scene in the mayor's office in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think that's sort of what you see a lot of is like, okay, we have that scene, now we got to do this. We have that, we got to do this. And
yeah,
it feels like a straitjacket on some level.
Interesting. Yeah,
which is ironic because they're about to be in straitjackets. So
that's right. That's right.
But I love this here where the mayor's like, what do you want me to do? Tell everybody they have to be nice,
Right.
It's treating people like dirt is every New Yorker's God-given right.
Doesn't that feel like a 80s, 90s sort of like
It really does.
New York,
It really
where everybody hates you or something.
Has that been your experience? You've been to New York a fair amount.
Yeah, not at all. No.
Yeah.
I mean it's like any city,
It's like any city, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they're a little more I would say head down direct.
Sure.
Los Angeles is a little more sunny, I suppose. But not this rude New Yorker stereotype.
But that was enough of a stereotype that when I watched this movie at age 10, I was like, yeah, that's like that felt familiar to me.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And it works for the comedy of this film, And I mean, right down to the plot of too much of it has generated this evil beneath the city. You get Brian Doyle Murray.
I was about to say, yeah.
He's just shorthand, isn't he? Just his face, just
he is a Brian Doyle Murray type.
Right. Exactly. Okay, I got it. I know what that guy is.
Right.
This is the same year as National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, also, where he plays Chevy Chase's boss.
Wow, that was Christmas of this year, I'm assuming.
89, yeah.
Wow, that year was stacked. So Max von Sydow, didn't we just see him in something? What did we just? Oh, Dune. We just watched Dune, you and I.
Oh, the old one, yeah.
Yeah. And you just saw him in Judge Dredd.
That's right. Yes.
Wow. It's a Sidonaissance
for me, yeah. Yeah.
He does have a very distinctive voice. Like I was kicking my own ass for not being like, of course that's Max von Sydow. Like, how did I not,
No, I couldn't place. I was thinking like Christopher Lee or something in that sort of ballpark. But yeah, no, now it's obvious.
Yeah, like again, I have to say, like, I just roll with the whole Vigo plot because it's just, you get it. It's just a thing that the Ghostbusters have to defeat. But I don't. It doesn't hold together as well as the Gozer scheme, of like what Gozer's trying to do and everything.
No, it's so funny because I mean, again, it's one of those things where I can imagine like a scene to cinch it all together would be nice, but on the other hand, I'm like, evil painting, bad goo.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or this even, like, okay, he needs a baby. We got a baby. He's gonna. Although when he steps out of the painting and he is an actual physical threat at the end, I was like, do you need the baby?
Right? That's a good point.
And this baby, by the way, speaking of the baby who we're looking at on screen,
two babies.
Twins. Yep. The Deutschendorfs, I guess, William and Henry, and they are the nephews of John Denver.
Wow.
Yeah, John Denver's real name was Henry Deutschendorf II.
Okay.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I know, and impress your friends at a party with that.
Yeah. Then we have evil Mary Poppins about to show up here.
See, so I find that confusing. First of all,
Yes,
seeing the
because that's
kid
Peter
on
McNichol.
the lid. That's Peter McNichol, which I don't. So is he a ghost now? That feels like a weird thing because you could have just as easily had it be just a demon of some kind, right? Like to come and get the
Or-
kid.
Yeah. No, I don't quite understand. It does feel very sort of kids film where you have like the villain dress up in something kind of funny, dress up like a nanny.
But it's like, is he a ghost now? Like, I don't understand it.
Right. I mean, he's possessed, right? But it's not like we know that he can leave his body or anything.
Yeah, like I've never understood this. Like what is this that we're seeing of Janosch?
Yeah.
I also think it makes the character needlessly creepy. You know what I mean? Like up to this point, he's sort of like he's a dupe.
Like a goofy servant. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Right. I think that bit is just a little too. It makes him too creepy.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. I mean, again, it just feels like a movie filled with ideas. And I mean, if we're to try to extrapolate from ILM's comment about we need this shot, like maybe they're just kind of making things up on the fly and just like, well, wouldn't it be more interesting if it was Peter McNichol who took it off? Just so there's some sort of connection off the thing instead of a random ghost because we won't know who that ghost is, and maybe.
Yeah. I think that when you describe what the ILM people were likely going through, it occurs to me like that they had the benefit of not having CGI. In other words, like there were actual limitations. Like, no, we can't do that. Sorry.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
As opposed to now, just stay even later and clack your fingers even harder on the keyboard,
That's that reminds me, I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here, but working on the show Bob's Burgers, part of my job back then was to look at the finished show for the last time and make sure there were no errors, like, actual animation errors in the show, because that was on a Wednesday and the show would air on Sunday. So I would have to sign off on a Wednesday, give it to Fox, it'd air on Sunday. And the thing is, when you watch these older Simpsons episodes and those Flintstones and whatnot, there are all these animation errors because it's like, well, what are you going to do? Like have these guys redraw 30 seconds by hand, once you discover the error. It's like some things you just have to let go. But with now animation being done digitally, if there were errors, I would write them all down and the animators had to stay in office as late as it took to fix the list of errors that I caught that day, because you could do that. You could, like you say, you could clack on a computer and then fix those things. So it's very different, very different now.
Different time.
Yeah. Hey, you never really want to see your baby on an altar surrounded by candles, do you?
that on my list of things. Well, it's funny because just earlier when you see him on the ledge, you're like, that's scary enough to imagine a kid. You know what I mean?
There's something just inherently uncomfortable, unnerving about seeing a baby in peril, even in a film when you know it's not real.
Yeah. See, like, I think Janosch, other than that bit of business with the evil Mary Poppins thing, he's just like this goofy weirdo.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that allows for at the end when they blast him with the ooze and he's like, I love you too. You're like, see, he's all right.
Yeah. Kind of a whoa, what happened kind of thing. Like he doesn't even have any memory of what he was used for as an instrument.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. I'd be willing to bet that evil Mary Poppins thing was the result of either something that was cut or just a quick, hasty decision to try to tie things together after that test screening where people were feeling like things weren't connected.
That totally makes sense.
That cannibal girls thing.
I like
so specific. Sorry, I said, I was like, what is that? And it turns out that was one of Ivan Reitman's first movies.
That's right. Yeah. No, I like this ghost montage. Some of the clever ways they bring stuff in, like this, where the lady's jacket becomes like possessed.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's creepy. You know what I mean? It's a good
I
old
love that. Yeah,
practical effect.
yeah.
You know,
You can
imagine
tell it's
wearing
like
that.
puppets, but it's fun.
That's
I like
great.
that. I guess that was an idea they had for the first film, but abandoned.
Makes sense. It feels like because in the first film, if you remember, after the containment unit explodes, you know, you have a similar montage of just ghosts running amok.
Mm-hmm. That's a cool image.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah.
I guess Phil Tippett did that.
It looks like a tippet.
Yeah, and I guess his condition, because they were so overworked, they went to him and they're like, "We need you to do this." And his condition was it can only be X amount of frames and it's static. And they're like,
Wow.
"Whatever."
That's fine.
Yeah,
It's the Titanic. Just there's Cheech Marin over there.
yeah, yeah.
I remember this shot right here creeped me the hell out, even when I was a little kid.
Isn't it amazing? It's static, but it's powerful,
Right?
right? Yeah, the ship and the people deboarding the Titanic, the ghosts. I
Mhm.
love it. It's really, like you said, it's still now it evokes this creepiness.
Hey, Philip Baker Hall.
Yes,
Wow,
very
he just
brief.
passed away. And there's Ben Stein over there.
Yeah. You wonder if this scene was longer or something. I mean, you hire these guys who are such great actors.
I definitely know that this whole thing when he gets so pissed off when the mayor gets so pissed off at Kurt Fuller, it's so funny. But they basically added this where he's like, "Somebody get me the Ghostbusters." They added that because they had a whole thing filmed where like Rick Moranis, what's his name, Lewis's cousin works at the sanitarium.
Right.
He's played by Eugene Levy, and he helps the Ghostbusters escape. And they've
Right.
just cut that all out. So in lieu of that, you just have the mayor be like, "Get me the Ghostbusters," and so it's by implication they've been released.
Yeah, they have a line in here about like the 10th circle of hell or something, right?
Yeah.
And apparently in the trailer, if you watch the trailer, that's a line Dan Aykroyd originally says at the mayor
Oh, interesting.
in another location. So you can see that this is like kind of a Band-Aid scene.
Oh, you'll be known as the mayor who let New York get pulled into a 10th circle, and then he just says it. Interesting.
Yeah. I love that stuff, by the way. It's not me picking it apart. I mean, just being interested in filmmaking, I find this stuff fascinating.
I mean, you have to do that sometimes, right? I mean, it's like we were talking about with Lethal Weapon 2, you know, it's like, hey, you got to make cuts. You have to cover edits with voiceover. That's the job, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, but your goal is hopefully to make it as invisible as possible. I mean, to your point, when you watch this movie, you're not necessarily aware of all of it. It's only with the knowledge of sort of the turmoil going on that you're like, oh, okay, I can kind of see that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if this is then the tail end of that, where his cousin let them out of maybe like a padded cell or something, and then Lewis is leading them out of the building.
That's right. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, originally the Kurt Fuller character was supposed to die.
Right.
He basically like the slime vaporizes him.
Right.
And I kind of wish they'd left that in, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe if he had done something really, really bad, maybe it was not fitting of a punishment for him, where he's just kind of a little bit of vocal opposition. I don't know. Maybe they felt like it was too much. Like we were saying earlier, they tried to soften it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. When and Vigos, mostly Vigos, or mainly Vigos. Sorry.
I was distracted by a couple shots in here where it looked like a second generation looking sort of fadedness to it, which made me think that there was some sort of visual effect that was about to happen, but then nothing happened. And it made me wonder what the story was with that.
That happens sometimes, though, with certain films, right? Where it's like a stray shot.
Yeah. Or maybe they zoomed
just
in. That could be.
Yeah.
Or cropped in. That might be. I don't know. I love this stuff. This is why I like listening to directors' commentaries. I wish you see them less and less these days because usually they're paired with Blu-rays. But
I think that they are still made available sometimes on streaming platforms, commentary tracks, but they've become a rare and precious thing.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I remember watching this in '89, and I'm like, man, I'm so happy to see the Ghostbusters back. You know?
Yeah. It's just such a the proton packs too, which I guess by the way, that's the first time they ever actually referred to them as proton packs is in this movie.
In this film, well, they did on the show,
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe that yeah, sure.
but in the film, yeah, that's wow. I never thought about it, but no, you're right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's such an iconic the imagery of it, right? You know what I mean? Like the
Mm-hmm.
backpacks and this the animated laser blasts. So
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Well, to the point about me being excited to see the Ghostbusters back. I mean, audiences were too. This was when it came out. It was the biggest opening day of all time and the biggest non-holiday opening weekend of all time.
Yeah, it beat
For
Last Crusade for
Yep,
opening weekend.
and that record lasted, Brian, for a whole week.
Right. And then came Batman.
And then Batman obliterated all of those records.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
which is interesting. I mean, definitely uh, the critic reviews were much more negative than audience reviews. Audience reviews were generally positive, but this movie just had the misfortune of arriving in the summer of Batman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
You
it's
know,
interesting too. I mean, all the actors and the filmmakers, when they reflect on it, it seems to be a negative experience. And
yeah,
even just they're like, well, we can see why it underperformed. They basically Reitman blamed Batman, saying that
yeah,
audiences, it seemed like they were seeking something more cynical and points at Batman and
yeah.
darker in tone, whereas Ghostbusters 2 was more upbeat and had an optimistic ending, and that was sort of his reflections on it.
I mean, this is all Monday morning quarterbacking, but I think probably this would have been a better Christmas movie.
I think so too. I can see that, or like November, Thanksgiving, or something.
Yeah, right.
But I was reading also, industry experts were saying that it was just a really, really crowded summer, also, and so you had
Yeah,
Batman on one side of it, taking the teenagers away, and then you had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids on the other side of it, taking the families away, and this movie, might have paid a little bit for that.
well, and I'm sort of talking past myself, but maybe the very thing that kept the Ghostbusters in the public eye, which is the ubiquity, between the two movies, that made the sequel seem less special,
Mm, yeah, maybe.
right? Like, oh, we
Yeah,
we get so much Ghostbusters already,
sure, sure.
because when you think about it, I mean, there was the same gap between Indiana Jones movies,
Oh, that's wow. Yeah, you're right. 84 and 89.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Huh. Yeah, good point.
But I mean, it's hard for me to say because I've always enjoyed this one, fully cognizant of its deficiencies, but I've never been down on it. I know some people were, but I I know that when it came out, there's a general perception. It was like, oh, the second one, it's not any good.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like that's changed. Like I don't know that this one is ragged on as much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I feel like I've said this about the Batman films a lot, which is when it's the movie of the moment, like this is the new thing. This is Ghostbusters now, or this is Batman now. You're scrutinizing it a lot harder.
Mhm.
Right. But then when you have more things come along and you can take a step back and you're not being so hard on it, you're like, well, this is fun to watch too.
Right. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I also I have to imagine that there is, I mean, again, 35 years, a lot of kids grew up watching this one,
Totally. Totally.
right?
Yeah. And I wonder too if you have an audience that first saw it as kids in 84 and then they aged up a little bit and this movie felt maybe a little younger next to Batman, which came out the next week.
Right.
Maybe they were a little
Yeah, I mean, just to your point, I mean, we've said before that we were the exact right age for Batman because we were like 9 or 10.
Mhm.
If you were 10 when Ghostbusters came out, the first Ghostbusters, then maybe the second
Yeah.
one would feel a little kiddie to you,
Right?
right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So this too, the Statue of Liberty effect. I mean, it's this amazing marriage of miniatures and composition, and I mean, just you know what I mean. Like
Oh yeah,
there's so much happening here. It's amazing.
yeah.
I got to be honest. I think as I get older, I actually I love this. I love the Statue of Liberty walking down the street and people cheering. I don't know, man. It just hits me in the feels.
I mean, this is my core essence here. Like I'm always rooting for like the forgiveness at the end of a film, or
Right.
positivity saving the day, and that's like literally what
Mhm.
this ending is. Like trying
Yep.
to rally New York together with a symbol that makes them feel good and having positivity fight like a supernatural evil that literally is negativity.
Mhm.
Yeah, this speaks to me very much. I love it.
That shot, by the way, of the statue crushing that car. I mean, that's amazing. How did like I'm looking at? I'm like, how'd you do that?
I know it looks so good. Yeah.
So here's
Which would probably I didn't know you could drive or license. Yeah, I didn't know that. And it's funny because now we know that he had a whole movie pursuing that character, and now it's like you're like,
yeah.
oh, this Slimer's gonna drive a bus to take me where I need to go.
Yeah, it's literally they said that they left in these little snippets of Slimer just because they knew kids would be expecting Slimer. But I don't know. I do kind of wish they'd had a little bit more of him in there.
Yeah, yeah, but they I guess they just didn't feel consequential to the story, right? They were sort of
Yeah, that's right.
these little side adventures that you just didn't need.
So originally, like pre-test screenings, it was just a situation where the Ghostbusters rappel down and they zap Vigo back into the painting. That's it, the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically test screenings that were like, wait a minute, that's it.
Right.
So they had to go back and kind of add some third act peril, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was reading about that. He said the last 25 minutes died a horrible death, and so they had to go back.
Jeez.
Yeah. Did the walking Statue of Liberty down the street evoke Marshmallow Man to you? Like, does that feel?
Oh, without a doubt. It felt like, okay, well, we need a big giant thing going down the street. So
It's funny because you can't escape it. However,
yeah,
I do love it because it is different. I mean,
it's
the
different
stakes of it, the situation is different,
with the
and
twist.
yeah, but the spectacle of seeing the Statue of Liberty walking down a street in New York is really fun to me. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what people thought at the time, but like, is that a bridge too far? You know, is that too much of a buy? The idea
The,
that you can get the Statue of Liberty to come alive, so to speak. You know.
I mean, at this point in the movie, for me, no, but
Yeah,
I think I
I
did
don't
read
think
there
so.
was a deleted scene where they realized they could utilize the slime that way. But I mean, I don't know. For me, I get it.
I mean, the movie is what? It's just under 2 hours, right? I'm like maybe a minute or two of that stuff wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to what I was saying earlier, yeah, a little bit, especially with the world building of it all, I wouldn't have minded a bit. But
Yeah.
even like a news report, like the Ghostbusters are on trial today, and many believe, why would you do this to heroes who save New York? While on the other hand, some people think it
Yeah.
was all a hoax anyway, and they destroyed a building and were caught defacing property again today. Now to the trial, something like that.
Hey, there you go. Do your fan edit, adding that in.
Right. But it really does make me wonder. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but Bill Murray said that they signed on to do this movie with a different script. And
Mm-hmm.
his quote was, Harold had a great idea, but by the time we got to shooting it, I showed up on set and went, what the hell is this? What is this thing? But they were
That's a
already
shame.
shooting it. And you're like, well, what? I'm just curious,
What
just
was
for
his idea?
curiosity's sake, what was it?
Yeah, and again, I mean, the experience making this was enough of an impediment, at least for Bill Murray, to keep him, from ever doing a third one with all of the band back together. So, real quick, so this right here, so I was watching with Hamza. This is like whatever 13 years ago, and I got up to make a phone call, and right here he runs out of the room crying. I was like, what
It's
happened?
scary.
It is, right? But he was like 3, maybe.
Oh wow.
It, and so like he had enough awareness to be like, oh no, I don't like what's happening to the baby,
Well, I know. Well, and you see the baby start to cry, and you understand. I mean, the actor is very scary looking.
It is, yeah.
The faces he's making, holding him up above his head.
And that's why Hamza's all screwed up even now. No, I'm just joking. No, he's a great kid. I'm actually very disappointed because as we are recording this tomorrow, I'm supposed to go see this, and I checked with him. I was like, "Hey, when are you free? To watch?" He's like, "Oh, absolutely." And then I got tickets, and then he's like, "Oh, actually, my coach told me I'm in the golf game tomorrow."
Oh,
and I'm like, ugh. But I'm watching it without him. I'm like, sorry, man.
Yeah,
everyone else is already going.
Yeah. I love this, right?
See,
Positivity wins the day.
I think it's a good message, but you have to admit it lacks the immediacy of, we have to cross the streams,
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I think that's it's not the problem with this movie necessarily, but it's like that first one, it hits every base, right? And even at the end of that movie when they're about to cross the streams, and Ray looks over at Peter, he's like, "It's been nice working with you, Dr. Bankman," and they kind of acknowledge, like, it's like it's this big heroic moment, and I don't think this one quite figured out how to measure up to that. I mean, we can acknowledge that because they had to stitch something together here,
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I wonder also if they had the special effects that we have now, if you could make more of a meal out of the fact that their singing is having an effect on the cocoon around the museum. Like you can start to see a crack and beams of light coming out of it. Like it might feel, or maybe you even bring the scariness outside, and the people feel threatened, but it's like, no, be brave, be positive, and keeping people there singing and having all of it melt in front of them. That might have felt bigger.
I think that's a good point. That does crack me up. I don't know if it's meant to be funny, but when suddenly Ray is Vigo, I don't know. I find it funny.
No, it feels very random.
Right?
What you were saying earlier, I mean, obviously there was something more to that. It was abandoned, but it sort of feels like a hat on a hat in the moment.
Yeah. It's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Now, did Lewis, did he do anything or no? He just feels like he did.
Yeah, that was my sense, that it just so happened to coincide with his shooting, happened to coincide with them defeating Vigo.
Right. Well, good for him. Everyone's cheering him on. It's nice. I remember these tanks on the posters also, right? Like they had the different look. They had the darker uniforms, and they had the...
That's right. Yeah, which they only really wear in the montages.
Yeah. I guess
the darker
didn't like them. They were designed for the film, and he was like, go back to the originals.
Really? Because I don't mind them, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it looks different movie.
I think in the animated show, they each wear a different colored flight suit. And so I would imagine that the thinking was maybe we can mix it up to have it reflect, what they did on the show.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense too. I mean, you think of the Ninja Turtles, it's easy. Colors help to distinguish a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was when I was at Target, and I was looking at, I mentioned I was looking at the toys for the classic toys, but they also had toys for the new movie. And it's like, oh, here's, Phoebe and Trevor and whatever, Gary, and it's all the characters, but they're all wearing the gray jumpsuits. And I was thinking, I was like, you can see why Kenner and the cartoon people were like, no, let's mix them up so each of them has a different color in the jumpsuit,
I think it makes sense, yeah.
So where does this painting come from?
It sort of feels like an idea they just wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really have any logic to it.
Wow, is it over already?
I know. It surprised me last night too, but I was like, okay, so you have New York cheering them on again. I was like, I hope someone is videotaping this. Someone has a camcorder, so New York does not forget yet again.
Well, but by the time we get to Afterlife, I mean, they kind of have, right? Like,
Yeah, the world has moved on, right? Like Paul Rudd is the
right? Like,
Superman who has to remind people, remember the Ghostbusters, come on.
Harold Ramis, R.I.P.
I know. I was gonna say in our world too, though, major world events happen, and we just sort of move on and forget, and it's kind of a sad reality, actually.
I mean, to that point, right? Like, yeah, I mean, how is 9/11 thought of today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it's barely thought of, or actually, even better, more recent example is like January 6th.
Sure.
Right? I mean, that's like 3 years ago, and it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right. Or you think, I mean, that's more recent, but with 9/11, you think of a younger generation who were, toddlers when that happened. And so they don't have the emotional scar, I guess.
Mm. Will Deutschendorf, there you go. Hank
Yeah.
Deutschendorf. The kid is like late 30s now, right?
I thought about that. Yeah. Actually, sadly, one of them's passed away.
No, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really sad.
Yeah.
So this here, that's that was from the ghost jogger scene. So presumably there's a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we passed it, but
Bo Welch. Do you know the story about Bo Welch? He was the production designer on Beetlejuice, and he had a crush on Catherine O'Hara. And I guess word got to Tim Burton, and Burton was like, "Well, ask her out." and Welch was like, "We can do that," her being like the actress in the film, and he's like, "Yeah, why not?" And so he did, and they've been married ever since.
Get out of here!
Yeah,
that is a lovely story. Wow,
is that sweet? I love Tim Burton too. Like, well, I don't know, ask her out.
Wow. All right. Well, hey, Ghostbusters 2. What do you think, man?
It's a bop. It's fun. I
agree.
It's fun seeing these guys in their prime still, as a team, goofing around, getting to see the old school special effects, and it's just fun. It's a fun romp.
Yeah, I think it makes me happy that the franchise is continuing on. I hope this next one does well enough to keep it going. But also, it's like we're never going to get this configuration ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And so you cherish it a little. At least I do, like we got 2 with these guys.
Agreed. And I was going to say, this could be my age speaking, but the whole tactile nature of the ghosts and the effects just adds to the charm.
Yeah.
/ the spookiness mixed with comedy that I think these movies pull off so well. And
right.
I think there's something inherently charming about that you can't replicate with the newer films. Holding nothing against those, but I just love that we have 2 of these with its quirkiness and its visual quirkiness that we get to enjoy.
I'll tell you, I watched this one and I just want to pour myself a bowl of Ghostbusters cereal and take a big swig of my Ecto Cooler.
I was gonna say, serve me up a glass of Ecto Cooler and I'm good.
Which they started selling that again briefly, didn't they? A couple of years ago. I
think when the last film came, or maybe it was the one with Kristen Wiig when that one came out.
The 2016 one.
Yeah. Did you try it again?
I'm not 10 anymore.
Dude, I wanted to try it because I loved it when I was a kid and they were serving it at a movie theater. And this was when I was at Bob's Burgers, and all of us, we had a lunch group and we drove to the theater on our lunch break and bought it to try it. And we were all like, how did we ever like this?
Oh yeah, so I don't even need you to tell me that to be like, yeah, I don't think it would work.
Yeah. One last tidbit, if people are interested, go on YouTube, Google Ghostbusters II Oprah Chris Farley. And there is a clip of all the actors here, Sigourney Weaver, Bill Murray, promoting Ghostbusters 2 on Oprah, and it cuts to the audience cheering, and you see a pre-famous Chris Farley like whooping it up and clapping, and it's really delightful to see.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that because he would have started on SNL maybe a year or so later, probably.
Pretty close to this, right?
Was he from Chicago? I know he died in Chicago.
I want to say Wisconsin, but he
Okay.
could maybe have done, Second City or something out of Chicago. I'm not.
That he did die in Chicago, right? I'm right. Wasn't he in the Hancock or something?
Yeah, no, that feels right. I mean, yeah, I kind of associated him with Chicago. I'm thinking he might have been originally from Wisconsin, but
Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, no, Second City or something. Because I'm thinking like, why would he have been in the Oprah audience, right?
Yeah. So maybe he moved there to do comedy, and that's when. I mean, who knows? He could have done a show that night, been discovered, and then there you go.
Yeah. And by the way, yeah, it's I'm on Wikipedia. It says Farley was found dead by his younger brother John in his apartment in the John Hancock Center in Chicago. Wow, I was right about that.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy. And it says, yeah, he his hometown of Madison, Wisconsin. Over 500 people attended his funeral, including Dan Aykroyd, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Rob Schneider. Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
No, but it's very brief, but it's a very charming clip.
Yeah, let's check that out.
Yeah.
Well, if you have any thoughts about Ghostbusters 2, let us know. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. I know this movie tends to get very polarized reactions, so I'm actually genuinely curious. What are your memories of watching this one? And of course, if you have any questions or comments for us, you can send us to them via email, or you can hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. Brian, anything you want to say as we wrap this sucker up?
I'm sad to be leaving 1989. I think in my personal life, maybe this week I'm going to try to find some more movies to watch to hang around there a little longer.
Well, I'm sure we can find other stuff to commentary track our way through, if nothing else.
Oh, sign me up.
Well, with that, on behalf of my partner Brian Hall, my name is Aki Hassan. This has been our commentary track for Ghostbusters 2. We will catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.